All right,
Hello,
Lori,
everyone. Oops.
let's go.
Let's go. We're anxious. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our May Jazzit with Java. We're happy you could join us today in sunny Calgary from wherever you are tuning in from. I'm your host, Lori McGurran, and it is my pleasure to welcome Michael Chu, who will be leading us today. We are very happy to be back to share with you the good stuff, which are Jazzit tips and tricks, and also what's fresh, which are the latest updates to our templates. But first, a few housekeeping items. Everyone's audio is muted for the presentation. If you have questions, please post them in the questions window. We will try to get to all questions before the end of Java today, but if not, we will follow up with you later. Please keep your questions related to the topics we are covering today. A PDF of today's presentation is available as a handout in your GoToWebinar console. If you have problems with the audio through your computer, please phone in using the phone number and access code listed in your GoToWebinar console. It's also on the screen right now. The webcam dialog box can be closed if you find it too much of a distraction. You will receive an email with a link to the video and a PowerPoint handout, along with a link to your attendance certificate for PD once we have the video posted in the next week or so. We also recommend that you load your certificate in Google Chrome, as it may not load properly in other browsers. So that's all the housekeeping. So let's get started. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Lori. So just wanted to say a big thank you to everybody for all the interest coming back from our
Hiatus.
time away hiatus. Yes. So as Lori said, we're going to talk about the good stuff. These are things that have been already released a while ago, but may have not caught your attention when we released them. So tips and tricks in here. We're going to do a quick poll question after that. And then what's fresh? So some of the new things that have been happening with the Jazzit products. And then a Q&A for however much time we have left. And then, we have future topics for Java. Okay, so we have been adding more goodies to the Jazzit Toolbox. So we're going to see what the toolbox is, and in particular, what's new there. We have added support for hyphen for long-term in the financial statements. And we'll see that's actually quite easy to add, and we won't lose it on updates. Resetting, retaining section settings as well as header settings in financial statements. We'll see how that works. Group cleanup, what is it? What working papers are affected by it? And then the dreaded compiled financial information 4200. So do we want the word compiled or not? And where's the setting for that? So we'll touch that in the good stuff. Okay, so let's get started here. So the toolbox found in the Resource Center, CALIB, for example, is specifically for administrators to help them create their own documents. For example, we have a bunch of additional letters, or modify our existing letters. And rather than understanding all the calculations and things to pull calculated items into your documents, the toolbox gives you a set of ready-made cells that you can just copy into your documents. And what I'm going to do is I'll just go through a few slides here, and then I'm going to show you a quick example. So in the toolbox, one of the things that's new is we've added under calculated dates, year only. So if we want to have only a certain year showing up in the letter, we now have a cell for that. There is other options as well, month only, day only, short date format, the long date format. But these are cells that you'll be able to drop in and then right click on them in the Resource Center and set it to your preference. We also have now added a whole section here for the client plural single wording for the management rep letter and the additional letter from client. So these are the documents that are actually coming back from the client to us. There's a setting in those documents to be singular plural wording. And if you want to add we have or I am, you'll be able to do that very quickly by just copying these cells into the document. And then finally, under the client profile, we've added 3 fields there. One is the client number, and that's directly coming from the engagement properties in Caseware. And we've added the federal tax account number as well as the provincial tax account number, which is under the client area of our home menu. So those numbers would appear typically in those letters where we're referring to the accounts, but if you want to add them into your own documents, you're able to do that as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to move into the KLib. Let me open that up and pull it over here to the right screen. There we go. Okay, so where is all of this stuff? It's actually at the very bottom of the document manager. So you see here, we've got a folder here for the additional letter from client. That's the one we're going to be modifying. And just below that, under additional letters, there's the toolbox, okay? So I'm going to open up the toolbox, and what you see here is it's organized on the left with the document map. So if I want to go to particular areas that I'm interested in, I can just click on the document map and jump to that area. So for example, firm information, this is the things about us. And then down below under client information, firm profile, we have information about the client as well. So, you know, what type of engagement is it? You know, what is the company name? What is the year end? We can get at all of this information right from the toolbox and copy it into our own documents. So what I want to be able to do here is we're going to do this together. We want to add a sentence into that letter that's coming from the client to us, and it says, we would like you to assist us with the preparation of our financial statements before the end of, you know, the year. What you might do is actually initially just copy and paste the letter from Word into this document, and then ask yourself, where would things change depending on scenarios? And those are typically where we would replace the word with a cell. And what I'm going to do is I've got part of this done, but I'd like to put the date in at the end there. So you notice there that the cell is CY date 1. Well, I don't, you know, how am I going to know that? If I just actually go right into the toolbox here, so I'm interested in calculated dates. So I'm just going to move down into this area. Okay, so we have calculated dates, and what I'm interested in is getting the year only. So I'm actually going to put myself, and notice I just clicked there and it's taking me right into the area that I need. So I'm just going to go into design mode. These are locked with your administrator password, so you can unlock that. I'm just going to copy that cell and I'm going to paste it into the letter where I need it. So I'm going into the design of this, again, with the administrator password. And you see right now it says 2023. Well, you know, that's only good for 2023, but I'd like this to work for next year as well. So I'm going to paste in my cell here and just come back out to form mode, right click on this and choose the option that I'm after here. So I'm just going to unlock that because we're in the Resource Center module. Right click and look at the options that I have here. So we could pick up the year for today's date. We could pick up the current year end, prior year end, next year end, specify the number of years ahead, or 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, so in even custom. So I'm going to just go for today's date, so that puts 23 there. I'm going to the top to double click here, just as a reminder to administrators when the person opens that letter, they'll see that there's an update, and I'm going to save. So that wasn't too bad. Now, in the engagement, what I want to do is I'm going to open up that particular document. You see there is an update available here. So we got the newer data on the right and on the left. Let's update that from the Resource Center. So it says, do you want to update? Yes. Now, do I want to keep the data there? In this case, no, because I'm actually replacing a blank with something here. So let me just pull that in. And what you'll see is that our letter is there, and we have that sentence. We would like you to assist us with the preparation of our financial statements. So this is tied to that switch in the letter. If I set this to singular, you see how that all just changed automatically. I would like you to assist me. We didn't have to do much other than paste a few cells in. Now that calculated cell on the end, this, when it's actually in the client file, is actually locked down because now it just says the cell is linked to today's date. So it's just giving me the year of today's date, which is really nice. Now, if I just go back to that toolbox one more time here, what I want to show you is that in that date area, if we just come back out, so in that date area, we have input dates. So if you want to allow the preparer to put a date in there, they can click on the calendar button to get a date in there with whatever format you would like to have it show. or we have these calculated, and we also have these pre-formatted. So there's lots of different options that you can just copy and quickly make your letter and look so wonderful, like you're a wizard. And we're just building that letter out with the toolbox. All right. What do you think of that, Lori?
I think it's really handy, and we always have, every time I turn around, we have more and more people that are using these additional letters for a variety of different reasons. And it's great to have them all in the same place and accessible by everybody when they're created in the Resource Center.
And we know people are using it because they're asking for new tools, which is wonderful. And we're
That's
happy
right.
to add more to that to help you build those documents very quickly. So the next item we want to look at is adding a hyphen to the financial statement. So originally we have not had hyphens on things like long-term assets, and we've been asked about that. So what we've done is if you have hyphens in your map structure, so you see down below there, for example, map 130, which is a title map, has long hyphen term assets, and you can see down below 230, which is a title map as well, so it just appears in the statements, says long hyphen term liabilities as well as long hyphen term debt. Okay, so where is that going to show up? So what I'm going to do here is let's get into our hyphen example, and I'm just going to show you the balance sheet here, okay? So what I've done is I've added a few section properties here for the long-term area because I've indented lowercase no spacing. You can right click and just choose section formatting to do that. You'll notice there that it's now hyphened, okay? So if that was my preference, and I could also set it to, say, for example, long-term assets, it is now looking directly at the map to figure out, do we need a hyphen or not? You see it also in the long-term area, there's a hyphen there, and there's a hyphen on long-term debt, okay? If I move down to my cash flow, under financing, I have long-term with hyphens here, proceeds and repayment of. And then for the note, I think it's 11, there we go. So long-term debt, again, it's hyphened. So what's nice about this is going forward, if we update our balance sheet, update our note, the mapping is not affected by that. So the hyphens will just stay put. We don't need to worry about it ever again. So once we have a hyphen in a map structure, we're good to go. And just to show you that quickly here, let me zip over to my hyphen example. And so what I did was, I clicked on engagement, I clicked on mapping, and I just moved down to those map numbers. So for example, map 130, and just added a hyphen in right there, and now it's in the statement. So pretty easy to add the hyphen support to your financial statements.
I think one of the nice things too is now it also is going to be in those draft statements that you have in Caseware.
Exactly,
It'll be
that's right.
reflected there.
Yeah, and that's all automatic. It's based on the mapping, so it makes sense to connect that. So you can just see here, so the balance sheet, section headings, long-term debt are all updated, as well as the note, and as you could see, the cash flow as well. It's the small things, right, Lori? Make it so
Yep.
good. Okay, so here's another area where we want to be able to retain settings and not lose them when we do an update. So for statement pages, the balance sheet, the income statement, and cash flow, resetting, retaining section headings and header settings, okay? So actually the financial statement that we were just in, this hyphen example, had a number of things changed in the long-term area of the balance sheet. Yeah, as you know, the default is actually to have this area flush out to the left in uppercase, not indented, no heading, etc. And the way we did that was we were in the balance sheet, we went down to this long-term area. Let me zoom a little so I can actually see it. And just right click in here and under section formatting, we made these preferences. Well, we don't want to lose any of these preferences when we update the balance sheet. Now, if this is something we did only for this client, and it's not sort of what we normally do, when we update, we don't want to go back to something else. We want to stay put on here, and we will retain everything that's set under section formatting. So any of the indenting and formatting that we might do in here. Now, let me go up to the headings folder at the top of the balance sheet. So this folder is at the top of the balance sheet, the income statement, and the cash flow. And what we have under here is a column for bold. Do we want it bold or not? Is it in upper or lower case? So we can make a preference there. And in the income statement, is it single or plural? So is it trade sales or sale? Okay, so under that folder, lots of things that we can do and set this up the way we like it. All of this is saved when we update the statement page. None of this is lost. If I want to though, I can click on reload firm formatting. So what that's doing is it's actually going back to the connected resource center and it's saying, how are you set? And I'll set it to that. So what we're gonna see is a big change to the long-term area because the default is quite different. So I'm gonna just reload the firm formatting. Let me do a print preview here and I'll just show you. You see how that long-term area has changed now? So that has put it back to say the firm defaults. Now, what does that do inside the resource center as an administrator? So as an administrator, I can open up the balance sheet module, set that area the way I like it, and then save it. And when I'm bringing in, if I reload it or reset to default in my client engagement, it's going to be like that and it's going to stay that way. If I click the reset to default inside the resource center module, it would actually bring it back to the Jazzit defaults. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So if we had made the indent and put in, you know, the heading in the long term within the module and click that button, it would put it back to our defaults, which is what we see here. Okay, so pretty handy, and you know, it's just trying to keep more of those settings when we update and actually have to do less. So if we're connected on mapping, you know, we're keeping a lot of what's going on now without having to mess with it on an update. Okay, so just in this slide, it's showing us that everything under the section format, and in long term, we have lots of options. So those are all being retained on update, unless we hit the reset button, and then we're just going back to whatever's in the resource center. Okay, that brings us to our next good topic, and that is the group cleanup. So we invented these words. Sometimes people call us and say, what the heck is group cleanup? I don't know what it is. What's it supposed to do? And we put this in here and went, yeah, you know, we could probably talk about what it is. So what group cleanup is, it's first of all, you find it in the property, plant, and equipment working papers. So there's two of those, and in the intangible assets working paper. So these working papers have up to 40 groups, and you can have up to 200 rows in each of the 40 groups. So you can have a lot of stuff in there. And we've seen people put a lot of stuff in these working papers. And the challenge we have is when we update these working papers from the resource center, sometimes you might see a message come up. So in group 1, for example, if I add 5 more rows, so if I started with 10, I add 5 more, I think if I can do the math right, that's 15 rows. And in the resource center, let's say we had 10. When we update it, gives us a warning and says, hey, you know, you might lose some data here because we're going to drop the last 5 rows, which we don't want to do. So it's tempting just to put 200 rows in every group and call it a day. The problem is it really slows this working paper down materially in some cases. So what we want is not to lose anything. We want this thing to load and recalculate and save nice and quick. And so we want everything. We want our cake and we want to eat it too. So here's what we did with group cleanup. In the resource center, you want to put 50 rows or something more in the resource center, great. When it comes into the engagement, it will run this group cleanup and actually set it to a minimum number of rows, whatever you specify, and we'll keep any row that has data. So let's say, for example, we had 50 rows in the resource center and 15 in group 1, all had data. Even though we set the minimum to say 10 when we do the update, it will take that 50 rows and just cut it down to 15 rows of data and leave it, call it a day. Let's say we had group 2, which had 5 rows of data and 10 blank lines. When we do the cleanup, it would have 5 rows of data and 5 blank lines because 5 plus 5 is 10. So that's how we get to that minimum, okay? Now, I'll show you all of this in a moment, but I'm gonna go a couple more slides. So in these working papers, under the document properties, and that's the link we see at the top there, we just got it circled there, there is an option to turn this off. I don't recommend you do that, but if you just say, I don't care, I don't want it, you can switch it off. The problem is you may find things get pretty slow. Even if you turn this off, actually, you can still run group cleanup without actually having to update. We'll see that that's actually an independent option as well. So you could just say, you know, whatever's in the resource center, that's what I want in my client file. So the other options, and this is under the template options folder here, is that we can just run group cleanup. So we can run it on only the open groups. So if the folder is open, we run it, but if the folder is closed, we don't. And that saves some time. Or we can run it on all the groups. So that's all 40 groups. We're going to go through and sort this out. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is let's get back to our trusty example file. And I'm going to go down and open up property, plants, and equipment. Got to get out of preview. There we go. Okay. So I have a group here that has 15 rows in it. And if I just point to it, that's row 15. Well, in my properties for this template, I've set the minimum number of rows to 10, okay? So we know that if these are blank, we're gonna be trimming this back to 10, but what I've done here is I've added in some information on row 15, which I do not want to lose if we run a cleanup, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'll open up this folder. Let me just split the screen here quick so we can just watch it do this. All right, so let me just open that. Let me just zip down a little bit there. There we go. So we have our cleanup button. And just down below here, let's take a look and watch what happens to group 1. So when we run it on the open groups, which I only have 4 open groups, 4 groups with data, it will sort the information so we don't lose this, and then it just trimmed us down to 10 rows. And that'll help us be able to load, save, recalculate nicely. So that's the idea behind the group cleanup. You'll find this in the 2 property, plant, equipment working papers, as well as the intangible asset working paper. Okay, our last good topic. We're moving along nicely. So when we were looking at the very early days of CSRS 4200, we saw some examples which had financial information, and then we started seeing compiled financial information, and it looks like we've settled on compiled financial information. You do have an option to toggle this setting between one and the other, and if I just go to my financial statement, so when my financial statement is set to being a compilation, as it is here, so under engagement, I am set to compilation. It's hard to get rid of notice to reader, isn't it, Lori? Still say, yeah, it's a notice to reader. No, it's a compilation. So we're careful to say that. If you right click here, so under the statement menu, if you right click here, you actually have the option to toggle this. You even have the option to have this in uppercase or in title. But if you toggle it here, it actually changes it everywhere in the statement, okay? So it's easy to do depending on, I think that most of the examples we're seeing now, it's compiled financial information. So personally, I would just leave it on that option. But if you want to toggle it one way or the other, it's very easy to do. All right. Lori, we're at the poll question.
Yes.
Okay.
Already.
So I'm going to read the poll question and I'll get Lori, she's going to launch it here in a moment. So we just talked about this wonderful toolbox thing. So have you used the Jazzit Toolbox? Now it's a bit unfair because if you're not an administrator, you know, you may not have, but I'll put it out there. So answer 1 or A is yes, it's helpful for creating letters. So you've used it in the additional letters and made your own letter. B is yes, I've updated existing letters. So maybe you modified one of our, you know, the year-end checklist letter, you dropped something else in there that you wanted. And the third answer is yes, both A and B, we've done that. Or the last option is toolbox. What's that? I have not used the toolbox. So we're gonna launch the poll here and we'll wait here. So please respond. We're ticking away nicely here. Oh, look at this, Lori. We're really going fast here.
We are.
You know, it's funny, everybody's used to these webinars now and poll questions. When we started doing this, people were like, where's the window? What do I gotta do? Look at that, we're already at 77%. That's
Yeah.
pretty good. We'll hold it open for a moment longer here. Come
Can
on,
I
we
ask
can get 80%. Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
just a quick question? When you showed the group cleanup, were you
Yeah.
showing the manual or automatic?
In that case, when I clicked on that button, it actually was doing a cleanup that's independent of doing the update. So when you click on update from Resource Center, it does that cleanup automatically. Remember that switch we saw earlier? Yes, no? It's defaulted to yes, so it will do the cleanup in the background. But if I want to do that cleanup later on and not update, then that's that button that I clicked on. So if you want to call it manual, it's not very manual. I just clicked on a button to do it, but it's independent of doing the update. That's the key.
Great, thanks. Okay,
Okay,
we're at
let's crack that
84%. So
and see where we're
close
at.
this up and
Close
let's
the
share the
poll.
results.
Let's share the results. You want to read the results? Uh-oh.
So
Okay.
82% have not used the
Yeah.
toolbox.
Okay. Well, I'm
Um,
hoping that that might have convinced a few people.
yes. Yeah, it's fabulous actually. Um, Imagine taking a document that you're doing in Word. You can just copy and paste the text, have the administrator copy and paste the text, and
Yep.
then you just run through the document and just start replacing the individual words with the cells.
You know
And
what?
it's pretty fast. You get the headers and footers and signatures coming into those letters. Um, if it's applicable, of course, coming from your accounting firm.
I still think it's pretty good though, isn't it? We got 4% that have used it to create their own letters, 9%
Yep,
have updated our letters, and 6% have done both. That is very good actually. And we know
yep,
people are using it because we are getting input on it as well. So we'll
yep.
just hide that now, Lori. I'll just
Alrighty,
click on that and let's keep on going here.
thank you.
All right, awesome. Okay, there we go. Everything's changed. So what's new in Jazzit? So what's fresh? Is the coffee fresh? I hope so. So recent updates to the audit, CAS 315. That was a small change that was made last year. Updates to the PACT. New tools to update your Jazzit products. Switching between dollars per unit or percent in the financial statements. We have a new button called the financial statement maintenance button. What does that do? We've added a new area to the year-end checklist letter for contact information. Our support site has been redone since last we talked, and we've been making a lot of updates to the online documentation. So we'll see that there. It's an excellent resource. Eric has been doing an amazing job just adding all kinds of goodies into there. Okay, so let's start with the Jazzit audit. So late last year, we released an update to the audit. I'm gonna just start with this. I got one slide I want to do here first. So if you are moving to our CAS 315 audit checklist, then we strongly recommend you use what we call the quick method, which is just to replace the resource center and master for the audit. So while you can update the pre-CAS, we don't recommend it. And there are actually two documents which actually, even in client files, have to be replaced. And they are, I'm probably gonna guess them, 520 and 550. 520 being the risk register, 550 being understanding the systems. Both of those are using the database underneath, and you will get it if you try to just update them using a resource center update in a client file. It's going to say no, we need to replace those. So CAS 315, as you've probably experienced if you're doing audits, is a bit of a change. So we just recommend starting fresh with that. Okay. Now, and under here, you see there's a link here to our documentation. So documentation.jazzit.com is where you will find our online documentation. And if you just do a search here for CAS 315, you'll see we actually have a page devoted to it. So Eric has organized all of this in terms of what's going on with CAS 315. And there is a video which we strongly recommend you watch before you do anything. So this is going to help you with the implementation of these audit checklists in your engagements. So I can't emphasize that enough. Preparers, admin people, take a look at this. Make sure you're comfortable with it before you get going on using our audit checklists. Okay, now I can come back here. So in March, we got a new financial reporting framework checklist, FRF 973. Combinations for not-for-profit organizations. So if you're updating your review or your CAS 315 from the original, it will actually now add that to your document manager, and you can just drag that document from the top down to the folder for your FRF and start using the checklist, okay? So what are these recent changes? So we released the audit originally in late 22, we're in 23. So in December of 22, we did release the CAS audit and we got some feedback on how we could make it better. So in March, when we released that new 973, we made some updates to those audit checklists based on the input that we got. The first one is that Form 520, Part B. So this is the risk register. We've increased the number of risks that can be identified and written into the database from 50 to 100. I thought 50 was going to be good, but now we have 100. And hopefully you don't have an audit where you're identifying more than 100 risks in particular areas, but that dramatically expanded it. We did update all the other documents that look at that risk register. So for example, 550, 590, A through Z, all of those now support up to 100 risks identified. Notice in bold here, it says that 520 must be used in combination with any of our other audit checklists. So if you're going to use Jazzit audit checklists, you have to use our 520. You can't use another one. The reason for that is that you are going to be writing those risks down to a database, which all of these other documents are going to be able to retrieve, okay? So we can just start, in particular, 590. I'm thinking of that one, we can just get the risks in there. So that's the first thing that's been updated. And what I'm going to do here is let's just open up a Cambridge Furniture file. So Cambridge Furniture is a filled-in form file that CPA Canada provides. We have added our own templates into a Caseware file and filled it out. It is a great file for just seeing how things work. This is a file you can actually download from the support area, same place as you download your audit checklist. The Cambridge Furniture is available, as well as the Pure Life file for review. So we've started to, add these as samples so you can see how does what CPA is doing relate to what's in our checklist. So I'm just going to open up the 520 here for a second and just show you the area that we enhanced. So down here in the Part B, so right here, this is now supporting as many as 100. I know it's awfully small, but there's a lot, and each of these have risk reference identifiers, which will appear in other documents. So great, we got that in there. 590, lots going on in 590. We made a couple of small changes in 590. One is that if there's no amount on the line, we're not going to be printing it, so those just skip automatically. The other one is that you see so up at the top, this is just a screenshot of 520. When you're putting in the relevant financial statement assertions, what are they, Lori? What does all that stand for? C, A, V, E, and P? Here's your test.
Completeness.
Yes.
Accuracy.
What's the V?
Valuation.
Yes.
Presentation.
Yeah, what's the E?
Oh, that's the one. I don't know why, but what is that one?
Existence.
Existence, that's it.
Yes. And you teased me with the PACT acronym, but
I know.
I like to beat you up here. So what we've done is now we've added this to the end of the risk description. So it appears here, and why that's important is that when we're adding them in, we need to know where are we setting these low, medium, and highs for this particular risk. Well, the AV column and the P column, we should be dealing with it there. Just these X's and O's, they're lots of fun. If we haven't got a risk underneath the area, when you click in this, you get an O. If you have a risk identified in the area and you click on it, you get an X. And it's just so the reviewer can quickly oversee where we have X's and O's of scobards and cobards and all that good stuff, right? Don't ask me I remember what those were, but we'll keep going. Cobards and scobards. So the other thing that we did was a couple of things on the A through Z. So this is the cash through the end of the balance sheet and a couple items for the income statement. Is that now the risks appear on here, not just the reference, but the actual full description of the risk. So when we originally came out, we had risk from 590, it just said R7, and you could click on that, it would pull up 590 and you could see what the risk is, but it's a lot nicer not to have to go back to 590. We can just see it right here in terms of what is the risk that was identified. So that's a nice change that we made. The other change that we made, and it's a small one, is in the part 3 of the A through Z. the Part 2A presentation area is now also connected here. So when we're putting in X's into this Part 2A, we're actually determining which areas are going to be set from NA to yes. And you can even have it just filter out and show you only the, filter off the NA areas to really clean up these checklists. So by default, we have this set up now where this Part 2A area is linked and it starts to show you what's going on down below. And I'm going to bring up one of these just so you can see this quickly. So in the Cambridge Furniture, we have the C one, which is for receivables. And what I'm going to do is zoom in a little bit here. We're going to look down under completeness, and you'll notice that under completeness, if I zip down to number 4 here, risk-specific procedures, right now it's set to NA. And if I go back up into Part 2, and we have risk-specific, it's a mouthful, risk-specific procedures, if I put a check mark under the C column here, so I'm just going to double click, and we go back down to completeness and we look at that area again, you see how this 4 is now set to yes. So these are all connected. And if you just put your mouse over it, it says it is linked to the responses in 2B, completeness, risk specific procedures. So by filling in this area here, we're starting to build the lower area in terms of what's relevant based on what you said here in Part 2A, which is a nice improvement. You know, there was something similar to this in our checklist before CAS 315, but we didn't have this connection and we really wanted it because obviously this makes it a lot easier to complete these checklists. Okay, let's go back. So there were some updates to the PACT. So for those of you who subscribe to our PACT, just a reminder that what PACT is for compilation, bookkeeping, tax type of engagements. Don't ask me what it stands for, Lori. Okay, so just right in the end of February, March timeframe, CPA did an update for the T1 organizer. So that's in terms of what do we need to get from the client. It did an update, and this is for the 22 tax year, did an update for the personal tax checklist. So the questions we're going to ask the client, and for the letter that would go back to the client for e-file and for paper file. Later in the tax season, so sort of towards the end of March, they did an update to the corporate, so the T2, the corporate tax checklist, and for the transmittal letter for the T2 e-file. So if you haven't updated your PACT in the last little while, just keep checking our what's new area, but we do send out emails to the administrators that have these packages just to let you know there has been an update, but I'm sure you're busy with tax season. The one they snuck in is sort of the one sort of halfway through tax season, and they added these last two guys, the corporate tax checklist and the standard tax transmittal letter. Okay, some more exciting stuff to talk about. So some new tools for updating Jazzit. So for administrators, at the very top of your resource center, you got a document there that says update your resource center. If I just zip back over to the resource center here, let me see if I can get back to that. Okay, at the very top, we have this guy here, and this tool is specifically to help administrators update the resource center. Now, we have added some new tools to really streamline this process. In particular, 2 steps have got some new things going on. Step 1, when we say where the GenMast is, remember the GenMast is just a master file. When we connect to that, if that GenMast is compressed, it will offer to uncompress it, so we don't need to do that manually. It will also bring it up to the same version of Caseware. So if we moved up to a new version of Caseware, but we open the resource center, but we haven't touched the GenMast, it will just convert that in the background, and then we are connected to it. So that's nice. Step 5 is really where a lot of the magic happens now. So just a reminder that what step 5 does is it updates all the documents that need to be updated, but we'll skip anything where you've put a custom date in. So that means you modified it and you want to manually control it. But if you don't customize, when you click step 5, it just goes through and does things. So what step 5 is doing now is a whole bunch of new things, okay? So what step 5 will do, first of all, is it will offer to back up the resource center and master before updating. And what it'll do is in where you have your update folder, it will just add a folder there and put in the date. just say it's a backup, and copy in your resource center and your master. So if we need to, we could go back. It'll just do it as part of the update process. It will now automatically add new or missing documents to the top of the resource center and the master file document manager. So we don't need to manually put it on the document manager. We used to copy the file in, but then you had to add it manually. So there's none of that now. It just appears at the top of the document manager, and you can just drop it down to where it belongs. Now, how do I know where it belongs? Well, if I actually look right at this, this is organized in the folders. Every document we have ever released, it's all in here. So if you look, you could see where we think it should be. Just drag and drop it down into that folder, and you're off to the races, okay? The last thing that we've done, and this is a big deal, is that we now update all the working papers in that linked master file. As part of step 5, it's all updated. So the only thing you need to do is update your statements under admin and update your letters. And if you just open up your Jazzit diag, it'll tell you which letters to update. You can go right to them from there. So it's a lot better. We know that we would like to just get to one click and be done, but this does streamline a lot of it. And what I think is important here is it will not overwrite your customization. And I think that's a big deal, right? So we don't update the letters because you may have modified things, and you have your custom headers and footers in there. So, but we do, update the working papers, which is super nice.
It's
Okay.
some really nice changes to the update process. When I think back, Mike, to years ago,
Oh, wow.
before we could, I mean, if you think back like
Yeah.
really far, where we used to put dates on the document manager,
Yeah.
this has really come a long way.
You'd have to compare manually to what was on our website and then pull them down. Yeah, it's better. It's better. Always can be better, but it's not bad. Now, we have had some people doing farming engagements, and they've asked us, instead of having the percent column available for the income statement and income type schedules, they would like to have a dollars per unit. So we now give you the option to flip between either percent or dollars per unit. And then, as a matter of fact, if I was to bring in 9-column schedules, I could actually make a schedule, one with dollar, one with percent. So, the 9-column gives you the flexibility of having these columns on or not. I'm going to show you a simple example here, just because I'm a simple folk. Let me go back here. So I'm just going to open up that example file. 1 second. Dollars per unit. Do I see it there handy? I do not. Let me just open that up. Here we are. I'm always nervous to have too much running at the same time because I think, well, at some point I'm probably pushing my luck here. But it is amazing how much you can run nowadays when you think about it. So, okay. So in this statement, the first thing that I did here is under columns, I've just got it set to both years. So I'm using the 2-year, very simple financial statements. So what this, both years with percent column. So I set it to that. And if I go down to the income statement and click on statement folder, what you would normally see is the good old percent column. Now, what's new here is there's now a button here under the statement folder. There's a button to toggle it to dollars per unit. And when we go dollars per unit, we can then specify the number of decimal points. So for example, right now I have 1 decimal point, but I could, whatever I want, it'll just change it to those number of decimal points. What is the unit? In this case, I'm doing widgets. How many widgets were created during the year? These revenues and expenses are based on, so shipped probably would be the denominator for each of these in the widget column. So when I do a print preview, we get a heading here, dollars per widget. We get that calculated down to the cost per widget and then how many widgets we shipped. So the total as well, you can set the number of decimal points on that. Probably a good thing if you're shipping cows. We probably don't ship half a cow, so we had to have
I hope
not. Hopefully not. So you can set that to however many decimal points. Probably the default, it's 0 is probably what makes sense there. But that gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of, if I don't want a percent column and I would like to use a dollar per unit, we are able to do that now with the click of a button. So there's our example, just quickly. Just a reminder that this presentation is a handout, so if you want to download that PDF, you can definitely do that in the handout area there. So just showing you what that financial statement looks like. Now that takes us to the financial statement maintenance button. So we have clients, some of you maybe today, who have been with us a long time. Long time. Now we started back in 2000. And what we've tried to do all along is if you copied in our financial statement back in the good old days, that you could keep updating, by going under admin and clicking on update everything. But there has been some things over the years which we just can't do through just clicking on, update under the admin area. And what I've got here is a very old file back to 2004. I thought that would be back far enough. 2004. Actually, when I originally was working with this file, I had to laugh because the balance sheet used to have these pointers, these little arrows that you would
Oh my
click on,
gosh.
and then you set the pointer to where you want the insert, and then you had to go back up to the top, click on the insert button, and yeah, a little bit of work. So what I did with this one was, as nostalgic as that is, I actually did all the updates in here. But even after doing all the updates, there are some things that just are not going to update. For example, it says unable to switch to the 9-column totals. Now, prior to this maintenance button, we would send you a technical bulletin and we'd help you copy in sections and then do updates and all that stuff. We're done with that because we're going to just have that happen. There are a few other things. One is that my home menu is not in the freeze frame because there was no freeze frame back then, and I'd like to have my home menu in the freeze frame. And the other thing is, if I actually looked at the document map, I don't see, there's some issues here. It says insert notes, and so we need to do some tidying up there. Now, if you have it in the situation where you get this button that says unable to load the 9-column, just to the right now, so I updated my home menu. Just to the right of that, it says launch the maintenance wizard. So I'm going to do that. So it says recommend you save. Yes, we'll save that before we do anything. And it gives us the laundry list of what's going to happen. So the home menu is now going to be in the freeze frame if it's missing, which it is. We'll add support for 9-column financials. That's good because we don't have that right now. We're going to update the home document map, so we'll clean this up. And we're going to add something called the doc map button to the home menu. Sounds good. So I'm going to let it run. And so we had to have done the updates. So we're to the point where we had all the check marks, but we still had some of these issues. So it says success. We've done the maintenance. Notice that the document map now is corrected. So that has fixed that issue. Now it's going to ask me to update the home menu. And what it's doing here is it's actually copying the home menu into the freeze frame. So now the freeze frame is able to accept the home menu. And what we'll notice in a moment is that the buttons that were white up in the menu now are shaded. And because they're shaded, we know that we're actually in the freeze frame area of the home menu, which means that, we can access the home menu no matter where we are. So you see how these are shaded? We'll see in a moment that actually is in the freeze frame. But you see it still says unable to switch to 9-column. So the last thing we're going to do is just update the 9-column the headers and footers. So a long time ago, I think this is like literally 2007, we started asking people, hey, send in your HF module because we have to add headers 8 and 9, I think it is, headers and footers to support the 9-column. I think it's 7 and 8, sorry, 7 and 8 header footers so that we could have pages on landscape, legal, but we had to do some work to your header footer module. So I'm going to click OK, and notice that now that button says switch to the 9-column. So I'm ready to go. If I wanted to, I can now flip over to the other set of statements. I didn't have to, replace this financial statement. And if I scroll down, notice the freeze frame is staying there. So now I could just open areas and, it doesn't matter where I am. So that's super. The other little guy we have now is this document map button in the freeze frame. And what this does is it switches on and off the document map over on the left side there. Now we like the document map because when you click on the document map, you can jump to specific notes. So that's super handy, right? Also, if a note needs to be updated, you'll see a little asterisk here in front of the note. So in terms of just looking quickly which notes have updates available, I can see that right on the document map. Now, what's nice about this button is if you turn on the document map using this and then save the document, the next time you load, it's on. If you don't like the document map, when you click here and turn it off, it will stay off. So once you click on this and save the document, the next time you load, the document map will not be on, okay? So there is some options there with that button, and it actually will save that preference for the next time we load the financial statement. Exciting stuff. All right, there's our maintenance button and the doc map. The last item I just want to mention here is in the year-end checklist. So in the year-end checklist, we have added a contacts area. So let me just zip down here to my year-end checklist letter. And I'm just going to show you that under other items, other information, let me just go right here. Oh, this is the old one. So I'm going to actually just do an update here. No big deal. Yep, I'm going to keep my data. And let me just zip down to other information. Okay. It's because I'm staying in the same file here. I just want to show you that this, so for other information, we've now connected to all of that information that's in the engagement properties for Caseware. So if you just want to confirm that that information is correct with your client, send it in. They say, no, this has changed. We can then just update that information in the engagement properties. Just to let you know, we've had a lot of comments on this letter, which is great. One of the things we are going to be doing in the next release is some updates to the requested items checklist. It's now going to be organized into folders with headings, so you can organize all of this and sort just those areas or add in to particular areas rather than just sort of a great big list, which I think is going to be nice because you can close these folders for things that don't apply to the client just in one sweep. So I'm looking forward to getting that out towards the end of the month for that particular document. Okay, so we mentioned there's a new support site. The address has changed. So now it's support.jazzit.com. The administrators back in around September should have received an email to go to our site, set up the password, set up the account. And just to give you a quick look at that, let me see if I can get over to it. So the support site has a new interface. When I go to downloads, everything is nicely organized in terms of, what products do you have subscriptions to? So for example, for the audit, we can, download the audit, including the sample files. So you see the Cambridge furnitures there. We can also look at that video from here, but that video is available for everyone to look at because it's in the documentation area as well. But if you're an administrator, you want to look at it, you can see it there. We have an online forum there. You can also pay renewals online, very convenient in that area. So support site has been completely updated. And the online documentation is being updated continuously. So Eric has been working away, adding new content. We just saw the CAS 315 page there, but a lot of the checklists or documents actually have a help button in the corner. And when you click on that, it brings up help for that specific template. So for example, in this document, if I go up to the top, you see there's a help button right there. So if I click on that, it will pull us into the help, give us help on specific options for that letter or just any other extra items that we want to talk about. So you can just click on the help button, it jumps you straight in there. If there's videos available, you'll be able to click in there and just launch that video as well. Okay, that takes us to a little bit of news that we released. April 3rd, we're very pleased to announce that Caseware International has acquired Jazzit. And I'm going to let you talk about that a little bit, Lori.
Sure. So we are very excited about being part of the Caseware family. We have had calls asking how this will affect our clients, and we wanted to let everyone know that you should not experience any change to your current products and services. The same Jazzit team that you're used to working with is here, and we're going to help you whether it's related to product sales or support. While the Jazzit company brand will be transitioned to Caseware, our templates will continue to be sold under the Jazzit brand. So simply put, you will purchase Jazzit templates from Caseware and you won't experience any changes from a product support or sales perspective. Caseware will not be making any material changes to either our Jazzit templates or Caseware's portfolio of desktop template products. Components of the Jazzit templates will be considered for incorporation into Caseware's cloud solutions in the Canadian market, but there aren't any timelines or details at this time. Know that we will continue to update Jazzit templates as required by standards changes, and you can continue to use Jazzit templates alongside Caseware desktop templates. There are no planned pricing changes outside of the typical year-over-year price indexation that you might normally see. So it's just business as usual for us, and we look forward to continuing to be part of your template solution for Caseware in the future.
Definitely.
Which is part of a bigger family.
Yes. Thank you, Lori. So that takes us to our Q&A. Lori, did we get any questions today at all that we can?
Had quite a few.
We did?
We had quite a few questions.
I kicked the beehive. So it was
You
good.
did on a few things. So one of them is, does the hyphen also work for something like long-term investments?
So that's a great question. Thank you for that question. Something like long-term investments typically would be linked onto the map description anyways. So a lot of where you see long-term, short-term, they're not so much headings as they are line items. So line items, when we're connected to a map, typically, unless there's something like due to from shareholder, but something like long-term investments, if it's just a map number, then yes, if you change the hyphen in there on the description, that's exactly how it's going to come in on the statement. Okay. It was really more titles that we were trying to connect.
Okay. Can you add that hyphen to the KLib for all clients, or how would you get that into all your clients, or should it be done on an individual
great
basis?
Question. So if we modify the map structure for the master, we can use copy components and we can bring in, update the mapping in the client file to just bring those hyphens in. So we could definitely do that. Yeah, and that's not going to affect, how accounts are assigned to map numbers. We're just updating the descriptions on that mapping structure. We're not even adding any new map numbers. We're just modifying a description on an existing map number. So you could do it with copy components.
All right. So we had a number of questions about the group cleanup, actually.
Ooh, okay.
So you answered the question about automatic, because we had a few people asking about the same thing.
Yep.
So how does it work? Like, is there a way to clean up the asset listing if there are things that have been fully amortized or disposed of during the year? How does that work?
We would actually have to delete the line. The key here is we're not going to delete data using cleanup, and data is if we see stuff on a line. So even because we actually originally we did take out 0 lines, and then people said, well, I have a description and I don't want that to disappear. So the way cleanup works is unless that line is blank, it's not going to touch it. It considers it to be data. So if it's fully amortized, right click, take the line out.
Okay. Just one sec here. When did we add that automatic to the group cleanup? Do you recall? Was that fairly recently?
It's been there a little while.
Ago.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I think we snuck that in, and because I had, the reason we even talked about it, I actually was talking to a client who's been a client for some time, and actually, fairly expert level of Jazzit, and said, what is that cleanup thing? And I'm like, we should probably talk about it. So yeah, no, it's been there a while, and it really is to try to keep that working paper reasonably fast. We've seen so much data going into those, and what really kills it is blank lines. So we can just, tidy that up, which I think will be helpful.
So what happens if your minimum rows is 20 in a group, but the client file has 30 rows with data and you click the cleanup?
You're going to have 30 rows. So what that is a minimum. If there's data in a group that's exceeding that, we're not going to take any of those rows out. They all stay.
Okay. Just one sec here. Just a sec, sorry.
No problem. We'll get back to you today too if we don't get you right on here.
Yeah, there's a big list here, and I answered quite a few of them. what happens if you don't see the document map button and you did a recent update? Is there
I thought
a
I'd get
reason why
asked
you wouldn't
that.
have it?
So is there a way to add the document map button to a template which has everything else? There is a way to do it. Basically, if you move to the statement menu page and just get to the bottom of that page, go into enable edit. There's some settings in there for support. One of them is the maintenance button. So if you click on it there, what it'll do is just update and add that document map button in there. So there is a way to do it. Just go to the bottom of the statement menu page, go to enable edit. So hopefully that's administrator. And then just click on maintenance button and you'll see it will just, it says, do you want to run it? You don't need to update your headers and footers and you don't need to update your home menu. So those were two things I did because this was a very old template. If you just run the first part and then say no to the rest of it, you'll get your document map button.
Okay.
If you really like it.
All right. Hang on, there was a question near the beginning. I just wanted to confirm that items in the toolbox, if someone was editing their notes,
Yeah,
that
not
they can
intended
use
for
that.
notes. No, it is really more for letters. The some of those would work, but the intention of the toolbox is for letters. So, for example, company name, the year-end date cells, those are all good. But when we start looking at the I, the we, and all that, that's really for the letters. So, depending on what it is, you could try using them. A lot of them will work, but the intention of the toolbox is for letters. So, if it doesn't, that's why.
Great.
I like the
Okay.
idea though.
Well, it seems to me that I could see that there would be an application for that
Yeah, for
for
sure.
some of it.
And a lot
So
of those would work. Yeah, we're
yeah,
right at 12, Lori, or 1 hour.
yep, I was just going to say, if you have submitted a question and we haven't answered it yet, we will be following up with everybody. So alrighty, I guess this is the end of our presentation today. Thanks very much, Mike. That was a lot of
You're
great
welcome.
information.
So
A
if there's any
reminder,
other topics that you'd like to have us talk about in the future, please feel free to send us an email, java@jazzit.com, and just pass along the buzz. We
yep.
actually set a record today for the number of people attending, which is amazing. Thank you so much. And share the link. We will be, as Lori said, actually go ahead, Lori. I'm taking your
Oh,
line.
I just wanted to say that a reminder that we have let me start again. A reminder that we will send you an email in the next week or so. Once we have the video available, it'll be posted on our website for you to be able to view. Your email will also include a link to download a certificate confirming that you attended this session. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. We have not yet set a date for the next Java, but when we do, we'll post it on our website and we'll send you out an invitation. And as Mike had said, if you have any suggestions for Java topics, be sure to email us. I think it's java@jazzit.com. And lastly, there's a long weekend coming up. So enjoy the long weekend and we look forward to seeing everyone again soon.
Bye-bye for now.
Have a great day.